All right, everybody, welcome back. This is lecture 21, part 3, PlayStation 3. So remember that we're talking about the game consoles of the HD era, which include the Nintendo Wii and the Xbox 360, which we covered in parts 1 and 2. And now we're going to talk about the Sony PlayStation 3. So PlayStation 3 kind of started out really slow out of the gate and then sort of picked up as the era wore on. So it comes out in 2006, the same year as the Wii. However, it cost $600. I believe it is the most expensive games console released um, at that point as far as mainstream game consoles go. It did come down in price over time. It was just the technology in it included a unique microprocessor called the cell chip. It played back Blu-ray discs, which was new at the time. So a very, very expensive game console. It ended up selling around 80 million, so pretty much on par with the Xbox 360 over its life cycle. It had USB connectivity, very similar to the Xbox 360. You could read external hard drives, flash drives, etc. It did utilize the Blu-ray media for games and movies, which gave it a lot more storage capability than Xbox 360 games, though in this era that didn't come into play as much as the Blu-ray movie playback did. It was backwards compatible originally with both PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 on the original PS3. They later on abandoned that to save money on cost. So you can see this is the original PlayStation 3 launch model. This is the later revised model. Okay. Blu-ray is a big deal for the PlayStation 3, and it was a big deal for Sony. It was the replacement for DVD. It stored 25 to 50 gigabytes of data. The DVDs had stored 9 gigabytes of data. And this is something you've seen through the history of games where the memory capacity of whatever media we're using to store our game data on keeps getting bigger. So it was designed as a replacement for DVD. You could use it for both movies and games. Blu-ray is the primary physical media for HD movie playback. This replaced DVDs. Even with the new 4K TVs, they call it 4K Blu-ray. Just an expansion of the format. Sony really wanted push Blu-ray. Again, this is important to remember. Sony's a media company, so they're pushing movies, music, television programs, and so having a medium that could display these. They also want to sell you Sony televisions, right, to have a great big HD screen on them. So again, they want this all to integrate together. Sony also planned to use this very similar to the strategy they had used with the PlayStation 2, where they sort of sold you a combo game machine, high definition movie player to go with your new flat screen. And particularly as they brought the price of the console down and high definition television became more widely adopted in the second half of the first decade of the 20th century, the 21st century, so 2005 to 2010 or 12, the PlayStation 3's Blu-ray functionality became much more useful to people. So that's Blu-ray. They did have an online network. They created the PlayStation Network in response somewhat to Xbox Live. So again, it's very similar in functionality. You can download games off of it. You can download movies, particularly Sony movies, right? And apps like Netflix and Facebook. The one big difference in this era was that you didn't have to pay a membership fee or a subscription fee to play online games. But the drawback to that was that the games didn't necessarily run as well as they ran on Xbox Live because each company then had to put up their own servers and manage chat and all that stuff, whereas Microsoft took care of that for everybody with Xbox Live. So it was free to play online, but the experience wasn't as smooth as you might get on the Xbox. But it did show that Sony was recognized the importance of online gameplay for the console. They later implemented a subscription feature called PlayStation Plus that allowed access to free games and extra content. This is where they started things like the instant game collection. The idea that if you subscribe to PlayStation Plus every couple months, every month they give you a game or two to download for free or some extra bonuses. And you see that today. The subscription models both on PlayStation and Xbox. So it's kind of the instant game collection was a really big feature of PlayStation Plus in their sort of fight for market share with the Microsoft Xbox because Xbox Live had sort of better seamless online gameplay. PlayStation 3 had some key first-party franchises, though again they still rely heavily on third parties, which is even true today. Though Sony does own quite a bit more game development than they did back in the day. So they had sequels to hit PlayStation franchises. God of War 3 and Gran Turismo 5 were Sony internally developed games. Uncharted and Little Big Planet were new franchises. We'll probably take a look at least one of those on the stream on Thursday if we get a chance. Metal Gear Solid 4, obviously a big sequel to the Metal Gear Solids 2 and 3 games that have been on PlayStation 2. So a lot of big first-party titles now in Sony's portfolio. So again, if these were the games you wanted to play, particularly games developed by Japanese companies, it's really interesting. The Xbox console tends to be dominated by Western game development, European and North American game developers, whereas the PlayStation 3 tended to have a lot more Japanese developed games on it. This isn't to say they don't cross over, because clearly they do, particularly as the price of game development has gotten more and more expensive for everybody. But generally, the PlayStation will offer Japanese developed titles that the Xbox won't get. You still see this today with things like Persona from Atlas Games or Dragon Age. I think 11 is the last one they released on the PS4. So again, it's just sort of like, what kind of gamer are you? If you kind of prefer these Japanese style games, then the Sony's got more of them. Whereas if you prefer the more Western games, the Xbox platform seems to have them. But both systems have a lot of titles. So here, this is Sony just kind of doing what they've done with PS2. Some key first-party titles like God of War and Uncharted, strongly supported by a really good third-party support. Third-party support, though, which had made the PS1 and the PS2 really stand out, was not quite as big a standout in this era, simply because the game companies, the third parties like Capcom and Square Enix and Ubisoft, can't really afford to spend 30 to 40 million dollars developing a game and then only have it be on one system. It's very hard to recoup your investment that way. So Sony did still have some third-party exclusive, particularly from Japanese developers, like we just said. But as far as the big third-party titles, the Resident Evils, the stuff you see, all this stuff pretty much appeared on PlayStation and Xbox 360. PlayStation Move was PlayStation's answer to the Wii. It's their attempt to sort of grab the casual market that was popularized by the Wii. It used the Move controller, which you see there, which is like almost like the Wii Mode, except it has like this colored ping pong ball on top that you can that changes color. It's cute. And it used the PlayStation Eye camera to sort of read the movement, and it's a little bit more accurate than the Wiimote. They released it in kind of about halfway through this era, about 2010, and it cost between 100 and 200. I can't quite remember. This was Sony again trying to capture that same market. So they had a lot of the same kind of games, like sports games and things like that, that kind of where you could move it around just like you would in real life. And they sold around 15 million units of this. Popular Science magazine awarded them for the most immersive, but these really fell by the wayside pretty quickly. Today, they're pretty much used with the PlayStation VR setup. They're the controllers for it if you have a game that uses non-standard controllers. So PlayStation 3, in summary, is essentially a copy of the Xbox 360. They're pretty much on parity at the end of this generation. The PlayStation 3 ended up second in the market space for this generation. It was priced too high to start with, but as they got the price down and people got the HDTV adoption going, they swapped over to the Sony. Sony again supported this for 10 years. They just discontinued PS3 support about 3 or 4 years ago. And Sony did recognize the importance of the casual market, hence the Move peripherals, but it wasn't something they supported for very long, and then they kind of got back to concentrating on the core market as the generation came to a close. So that's it for PS3. We'll come back and do part 4 and talk briefly about the emergence of downloadable content on game consoles that happened in this era, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys later. Bye bye.